Throughout the history of Australian media, we have seen many different representations of Aboriginal people and culture from Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. Film and TV characters, comics and newspapers, books, and real-life coverage in media outlets, both positive and negative. A 2018 survey by Reconciliation Australia reported that only 40% of Indigenous Australians believed that Australian media presented a balanced view of Indigenous people. Over the years, these representations have slowly sought to become more visible and accurate, encouraging an open discussion of how people like myself, non-Indigenous media makers, should conduct themselves in portraying the Indigenous experience in the media. In my first journal entry, I wrote about how I expected the course to delve into how we can explore Indigenous identities, as well as shared futures, where there is an equal amount of representation seen in the media, and a balance of Indigenous and non-Indigenous people working behind the scenes. I wondered as how a non-Indigenous person I could respectfully work with these stories and cultures without being tokenistic or disrespectful. And the video portrait of my place was the first time I had done an acknowledgement of country in any of my work. Anita Heiss discusses in her essay that many non-Indigenous writers have a notorious history of creating unrealistic, patronising and whitewashed representations of Aboriginal people. And Garen Steele told us in his lecture that consultation with Indigenous people is key to doing this respectfully and right. Anita, Garen, as well as lecturer Hugh Davies believe firmly that non-Indigenous people have a responsibility to connect with the history of our place and represent it as truly as possible. Whether it is through digital technology, like Hugh Davies' augmented reality walking tour of the RMIT City campus, a film like The Nightingale, directed by Jennifer Kent, a white woman, or music, non-Indigenous Australians have made efforts to create representations of Indigenous people and culture in the Australian media. But how can we do this responsibly? The Preatures' sophomore album Girlhood was released in 2017. Fronting the Sydney-based band is 31-year-old Isabella Manfredi, who co-wrote one of the album's main singles titled Yanada. The song was initially about a close relationship between two women of different ages.
And then at a certain point, we were doing it and I realised that I was telling an Indigenous story with this song. And being non-Indigenous, obviously we stopped what we were doing and went, well, how do we tell this story? Is it appropriate? Who do we talk to?
Isabella worked with Indigenous songwriter Jacinta Tobin to write the song's lyrics with Darug, one of the Indigenous language groups of the Sydney region.
So this song is called Yanada, which means moon in Darug. And the lyrics are Yanada, 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 Mari Yanada. So Mari is full, very big full moon. Kumeda is spirit. Walama Yanala means let's walk together. And Wanora, Walurawa, is on country. So let's walk together on country.
Extensive protocols were followed by Isabella, Jacinta, and the band to make sure the song's use of Darug language was acceptable, including consultation with various Indigenous committees and groups, as well as letting a spirit sign of an eagle being spotted by Jacinta. Both Isabella and Jacinta contend that languages and culture should be shared across all Australian identities.
Our history has been whitewashed. Why can't we share our language? Who is telling me I can't share my language?
We need non-Indigenous people. We need to all be speaking language. And more to that, it's all of our collective history.
The song's music video, directed by Nick Lajisak, whose filmmaking centres heavily on Aboriginal heritage and culture, tells a story of an Indigenous and non-Indigenous female relationship. The video embraces a collective Australian history, traditional and modern cultures. The Collingwood photo book made for Assignment 2 also represents this idea, with images of Indigenous iconography juxtaposed with Australian modern architecture and culture. It acknowledges how we got to this place and what came before it, while also representing the Indigenous history and people of the area today. So to answer the question of how non-Indigenous people can be responsible in how we tell Indigenous stories, we should follow in the steps of Isabella Manfredi and Jacinta Tobin in working together, consulting with the people who these stories belong to, and being as truthful as we possibly can in telling stories about our place.